Members of the legislature, my amendment may seem to be a bit unorthodox. Senator Ashford's amendment that I'm dealing with would be AM 1267, I believe, which talks about striking on page 1, lines 11 through 16, the new matter. And he substitutes this language: on July 1st, 2007, the salary of the Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court shall be $131,285.61. On July 1st, 2008, the salary of the Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court shall be $135,880.60. Before I go to my amendment, I'd like to ask Senator Ashford a question.
Senator Ashford, would you yield to a question?
Yes, Senator Chambers.
Senator Ashford, in the first part of your amendment that relates to the increase that will take place on July 1st, 2007, the small change ends with 61 cents. When we get to July 1st, 2008, the small change ends with 60 cents. What happened to that penny?
I think I have it here in my right-hand pocket, Senator Chambers. But I don't, right offhand, other than in my pocket, I don't know where it would be.
Well, you know that a judge cannot accept compensation from you or any other person, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So the penny in your pocket won't work, correct?
It'll have to stay in my pocket.
Okay.
I was just trying to find a cute answer to your question.
And it was good. I think so. Now, have you drawn up on your gadget my amendment?
Yes, I have.
What words am I striking from your amendment, so I can see if we're on the same page?
I believe you're striking the Chief Justice and those
right.
words.
And that would mean that I'm willing to give this increase to the judges, but not to the Chief Justice.
That's correct. That's what you are.
I would refer to him. That's all I'll ask you. First of all, Senator Ashford, do you support my amendment?
No.
Why not, if I might be so bold as to inquire?
Well, I have to know why first.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll speak a bit, and then I'll see if you support it. I would refer to this man as the chief of injustice. I read a dissenting opinion he gave in a case. There was a split decision. 4 intelligent judges, 3 not so intelligent. 2 of them followed this man called the Chief Justice. His name is Michael Heavican. Before he was elevated to this high and lofty position of responsibility by Governor Heinemann, who has talked in recent days about how he's going to show me my place, words to that effect, he's going to fix me. Before he was elevated to the position of Chief Justice, Mr. Heavican was a political hack. He was county attorney of Lancaster County and did not distinguish himself as far as being a highly competent lawyer. He wanted to be the Attorney General of the state of Nebraska. He ran in the Republican primary and lost. So he was not a successful politician. He got a political appointment to be U.S. Attorney in Nebraska. All appointments to the U.S. Attorney position are political. Occasionally, a U.S. Attorney has great competency in the law. In this case, that was not the situation, in my opinion. Mr. Heavican made a show of appearing in press conferences to give the impression that great work was being done by him in conjunction with the Omaha police. One of the schemes he helped hatch dealt with a way to circumvent a law in Nebraska so that money from confiscated drug enterprises would not go to the schools in the state of Nebraska. How did he do it? He said when time comes to confiscate the ill-gotten gains of a drug enterprise, whether it's money, vehicles, or whatever, we'll let the federal guys come in and take it, the forfeitures. Then instead of that money, half of it going to the schools, the federal government would get it all. And then they'd give the lion's share back to the local police agency, and they'd keep all of that, and none went to the schools. That's what the U.S. Attorney, Michael Heavican, did. That's his respect for the law. And I'll tell you what else they did. There is a law on the books in Nebraska, because I put it there, that certain categories of persons in custody, whether parole, probation, in jail, could not be used as undercover snitches for the police. So the State Patrol and Michael Heavican agreed or schemed or colluded to let the federal authorities use this snitch and circumvent the Nebraska law. But what the Nebraska Supreme Court said, there was so much involvement with this snitch by the Nebraska State Patrol that nothing this snitch said could be used at the trial, which is what the law says. So, despite all the machinations and attempts to skirt the law by this man who is sworn to uphold the law, skirting the Nebraska Constitution in one instance and trying to skirt the statute in another, he now is the Chief Justice, appointed by David Heinemann. Well, a man with a record of so little respect for the law certainly should not be the Chief Justice of this state. An amazing thing happened. When he was appointed, lawyers came from everywhere talking about what a great lawyer he had been and what a great judge he would be. But they knew that he was a political hack. And they knew he had helped the federal authorities circumvent the Nebraska Constitution and the Nebraska statute. And he helped corrupt the State Patrol because they were going along with him with the intent of circumventing the law. But the Nebraska Supreme Court said, fellas, there's too much involvement by the State Patrol. The Nebraska law applies, and what this snitch is presenting cannot be used in any proceeding whatsoever. If I'm lying on Heavican, you think I'm going to stand up here and say it? No. I'm telling the truth. He's the man who is a stranger to the truth. I had talked about the number of shootings in my community, and the shooters were teenagers. There are many teenagers with guns in my community. And they're not like these guns with a broken handle or something taped together to hold it together. These are brand new modern pistols. And I pointed out that in order for these guns to be obtained by youngsters, they had to know who the gun sellers, gun runners, gun dealers are. And if these kids know who they are, the police know. The U.S. Attorney knows. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, that bureau knows. And Michael Heavican knows. And they look the other way. Because the guns are being used in the black community by young black men against other young black men. And I've said those things on the floor of the legislature. I have a weekly television program in Omaha, and I said it on that program. I wrote to the head of the FBI, and nothing is done. How much time do I have, Mr. President?
Time, but you may continue, Senator, on your next slide.
Thank you, because while talking about a man who disregarded the law, I don't want to disregard the rules. If a drug dealer is going to make money, he or she must make it through volume. So people know who the drug dealers are. And when you have drug dealers plying their trade in a community, it's because the cops know, and either they've been paid off, bought off, or scared off. And drug dealers function in my community also. And we're not cops, we're not vigilantes. They're people sworn to uphold the law and enforce the law, and they're paid to do it, but they don't do it. And Michael Heavican knew it and took no steps to do anything about it. So my suggestion was that since the kids know who these gun dealers are, these gun sellers, then let the kids be the cops and make the arrest, because they know who they are and where they are. You think these cops don't know? You think they can't find out? They've got snitches for everything else. And that's the man who is the Chief Justice. Now, if I said this and he was not the Chief Justice, it'd be a ho-hum. But now, because they put a gown on him and put a wooden hammer in his hand and lets him sit on a bench, all of a sudden he's beyond the realm of criticism. Not as far as I'm concerned, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and neutrals, because some of those may be out there watching. He's the man who said that even though a case was pending before the Nebraska Supreme Court, which might strike down the electric chair as being cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, he said, by God, we set an execution date, burn him. That's how I feel, because he doesn't respect the law. He doesn't respect the nature of judicial work. He lacks a judicial temperament. He was put there by David Heinemann, who knew the lawless attitude of Michael Heavican, and appointed him there anyway. And Heavican carried to the bench what he was before he got there. Too bad Parson Carlson is gone, because he'd be familiar with the verse that talked about when somebody croaks. If a man is dirty, let him be dirty still. If he's righteous, let him be righteous still. If he was nothing before he got to the bench, he's nothing on the bench unless his conduct swerves from his pattern of conduct prior to when he became the Chief Justice. I don't tremble in front of badges and titles that some guy has. They call him Chief Justice, so that makes him somebody that I'm afraid of. Badges and titles mean nothing to me. You won't hear anybody talk about a Chief Justice who's in office in the way that I'm talking about this man, but I'm facting, not acting. What Marty Conboy said when he was down there testifying on a bill before the Judiciary Committee, and I brought these matters up to him, he said, Ernie, I have to agree with you. If there was the epidemic of guns in the hands of young white guys in a white community, it would have been stopped. It would have been stopped. The FBI has conducted stings on gun dealers in Omaha, licensed dealers who were illegally selling weapons. You know why? Because the weapons were being purchased by the kind of white people who would use them against white people. They know how to conduct stings too, and they've done it. And I've called this to the attention of the authorities.
1 minute.
You've shown it. So you choose not to do anything. And I'm deeply offended by that. No community should be faced with what my community is faced by. Now, we have cops who come out and shoot black people, unarmed black people. One guy was tasered 10 times into unconsciousness, and the county attorney decided that no felony had been committed. A white male cop forced a black prostitute to perform oral sex on him, but she was smart enough to use a plastic identification card to spit the semen on and had his DNA, otherwise they'd have cut him loose. And then the judge, after telling how he shamed himself, his profession and so forth, gave him probation. And black people are supposed to respect the law and the courts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Your light is next, and this is your third time, Senator Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as John Paul Jones or one of those guys said, I have not yet begun to fight. We might be here till 12 o'clock tonight, but don't count on it. There's a point I want to make, and it won't take me that long to make it. If a black cop had forced a white prostitute to perform oral sex on him, you think he'd have got probation? Heavens no. That's what the white justice system, as it's called, does to us. And y'all wonder why we're upset with it and say there is no justice here? He's a cop enforcing the law, and that's what he's doing. And that's probably not, I'm sure that's not the first time he did something like that. And then he lied when he was being investigated by Internal Affairs. And the judge knew all of these things. We're not human beings. So the least I can do is talk about what these rascals and rats do. Apology to the rats. They're what they are by nature. They behave according to the nature of a rat. Human beings are rational animals, and they choose to do certain things. So my amendment says that the judges of the Supreme Court will receive this salary increase. It just eliminates the name of the acknowledgement of the Chief Justice. But he'll get the increase also. Now I'd like to ask Senator Ashford a question.
Senator Ashford would yield to a question.
Yes, Senator Chambers.
Senator Ashford, do you support my amendment?
You know, I don't, Senator Chambers, because I don't think we can. No, I don't.
Senator Ashford, do you understand why I offered the amendment?
Yes, I do.
If you were situated as I am, and if the things that I'm saying are true, would you be at least somewhat disturbed with that state of affairs?
Senator Chambers, I agree with you that there are many, many instances where black defendants are not treated equally with white defendants, and I do agree with you.
Do I have the authority to arrest a cop? A misbehaving
Do you personally?
Cop? Yeah, do I have the authority to go out and arrest cops?
I don't believe you do, Senator Chambers.
Can I arrest a U.S. attorney for dereliction of his duty?
I don't believe so. I think you're no.
So I'm powerless as a private citizen to do anything about any of these things I'm talking about other than complain and appeal to those who are in a position to do something about it. Do you agree?
That's correct, Senator.
And if they don't do anything about it, what's left?
Not much, Senator.
Now, suppose I were a very volatile person and I went over the edge, then I might decide to resort to some self-help as other people have done in other places under other similar circumstances. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
So it's probably very fortunate that I am not of the frame of mind to do things like that. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree that that's would be appropriate, Senator.
So by comparison to what I could be doing, what I'm offering here is really quite mild, isn't it?
In a relative sense, it's somewhat mild, yes.
And all I've done is used words. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's what you do.
Have I used any profanity?
No, you haven't.
Any vulgarity?
No, you haven't.
So the only fault that can be found with this amendment is that you think that it ought not to be done because we should not eliminate the term Chief Justice from what we're doing. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe the salaries are all tied to the Chief
1 minute.
Justice.
Well, if the term the Chief Justice were eliminated, do you think that this bill would not be effective?
In my mind, it's questionable whether, without changing other parts of the statute, whether it would be effective.
But in the paragraph right below all of this, there's a reference to the Chief Justice and all the judges pointing out that they cannot hold any position for pay while they're on the court. So it doesn't eliminate Chief Justice from the statute altogether, correct?
That's correct. Yes, correct.
But you don't want to roll the dice. I'll tell you
not tonight, sir.
Vote with me to put this in, then I will support you in a motion to to strike my amendment. Are you willing to do that? Or do we need...
I think I've got to go with what I have here, Senator Chambers, because
Okay, so how many hours do you want to spend on this?
How many do you want to spend on it?
Time.
Well, it's not up to me. Thank you, Mr. President.
There-
Mr. President, and I will close at this point, but I haven't decided whether I'm going to move to reconsider. I haven't decided really what I'm going to do on this bill. But when I read that opinion written by the man called Chief Justice Heavican, I called the chief of injustice. And as kids in the community say, when I was a little fella, I said it, I meant it, and I'm here to represent it. I don't care about him. He would kill a man under circumstances where that killing could constitute criminal conduct, in my view. He elevates rigid formalism above judicial substance. Justice, that which is fair and proper and appropriate. He never said once that the court lacked the authority to do what it did. He pointed out that there's no constitutional requirement of the kind of things he was saying ought to be the case. And he acknowledged the court had the power to do it. But he's peevish. He's trying to do what his boss, David Heinemann, put him up there to do. Be a prosecutor on the bench like you were out here. He doesn't know the meaning of the term judicial temperament. Now, he would understand the term hanging judge because that's what he is. A lot of lawyers would never say what I say because they're going to have to go before him, and they don't want to alienate him. So we consider things other than what it is we ought to say, and will do and say those things that are expedient. Those things which will carry a political benefit for us. And the truth is not spoken. When Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?" and walked out, as Bacon said, it would have been good had he stayed there so that we could have gotten the answer. And if Parson Carlson were here, he'd say, well, Jesus did give the answer at another juncture. And I'd say, Senator Parson, when was that? He would say, well, Senator Chambers, if you were up on your Bible, he'd say Bible, if you're up on your Bible, you know that at another place Jesus said, my word is truth. He just didn't give the answer to Pilate, but he gave it somewhere else. I'd say, Parson Carlson, touchy. Y'all say, touche. You got me on that one. But really, that question has never been definitively answered. What is truth? I'm speaking a truth with all that I've said, and that goes back to what I've discussed in the past about a white man not having to have qualification to get a position. A black man couldn't have the spotty history of a Michael Heavican and be appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court anywhere. But white men don't have to be qualified. They've always had affirmative action. All of these housing programs, Fannie Mae and all the rest of them were created for white people. All of those programs put in after the war were created for white people. And black people were systematically banned and barred from them. Those were examples of white affirmative action which white people have always had ever since they've been in this country and which they enjoy right now. And we watch these things. We're not crazy.
1 minute.
If we were, we would demonstrate it in the way that some of these other people do, that take an action of a different kind from what I'm trying to engage in here. So don't be scandalized at anything I say. Be glad that I'm limiting my opposition and protests to words. Senator Ashford can't stand up here, even after he does some research, at a future time and say the things that I've said about Michael Heavican are not true. But he wouldn't draw the conclusions that I draw, because Senator Ashford is a nice person. And I'm a nice person when people allow me to be. But when they're like this man is, and he abuses authority, and he abused his power and did not comply with his oath of office when he was in other positions? I don't have any respect for that. And I certainly don't fear him.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll ask for a call of the House. Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, and I want Senator Ashford to know that I'm not going to try to take the wheels off this bill. And all the other lawyers who've always got to vote for a judge's salary increase. Although some of them will vote against things that will help ordinary people, as Senator Persh did several times on the budget bill. I watch these lawyers. I watch them. They won't vote against a judge's increase. Get a list of all the lawyers and watch how they vote. But if you talk about some money to help people who need it, you find the lawyers all of a sudden, they can find the no button. A judge is nothing but a lawyer. And they are not cut from different cloth unless it's an inferior cloth. I'm interested in seeing and reading very carefully future opinions of the Chief of Injustice. I want to watch how he handles and disposes of other cases. He wasn't a good lawyer as a county attorney. He was not a good lawyer as the U.S. attorney. He's not a good lawyer as the Chief of Injustice of the Nebraska Supreme Court. This man is disregardful of the solemnity, the gravity of a case dealing literally with life or death. Suppose he had gotten his way and a man was executed and in the process caught fire. That doesn't mean anything to Michael Heavican, but say all that happened. And the other judges, 4 at least, ruled that the electric chair violates the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. What do you think Michael Heavican would say after that? Them's the breaks. Judges are paid to do hard things. We are the law. Does a person become fit for a position simply because he occupies it? Some men have become better after they became judges. Everybody writes about the fact that Hugo Black was a practicing member of the Ku Klux Klan before he became a Supreme Court Justice, U.S. Supreme Court Justice. But as years went by, his political and judicial philosophy evolved, and he became known as what some people would call a liberal, a defender of civil and other rights. So the fact that a person was a scoundrel before ascending the bench does not mean he or she has to remain a scoundrel or a scoundreless, as the case might be, after ascending to the bench. But I'm going to watch this man. And I'll tell you something that is troubling to me. I have a lot of work to do in this legislature, Senator Stootman, but I'm paid to do it. I'm paid to do that. But I shouldn't have to do the work of others. Do you all realize if I hadn't written that letter to the Supreme Court, Carrie Dean Moore's case never would have come before the judges and they wouldn't have made the proper decision? What Judge Gerard acknowledged in writing his opinion for the majority.
Time, and you may continue, Senator Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is the last time I know I will have to speak on this bill. I'm not going to offer any other motions or amendments. Judge Gerard pointed out that pending before them was a case that they would have argued in September before them. It had a fully developed record on the question of whether or not the electric chair is constitutional as a punishment under the changing landscape of the law and society's attitude. He wrote that had they properly considered these factors, they would not have issued a death warrant in the first place. And he's right, they wouldn't have. And you wouldn't be listening to me saying these things now. And I wouldn't have had to do other people's work to find a way to let the court do its job. And if these lawyers in here would read my letter to the court and read the court's opinion, you'd be shocked probably at the similarity between what I wrote and what they decided. Because I don't just write words and throw them out there. I read the Constitution, I read the statutes, I read court cases, and I understand the power of a court. I know what inherent powers are. I know what a court can do on its own motion, and I'm the one who raised those issues, and I'm the one who pointed out that an inmate cannot make the court waive its duty to obey the law. Those are weighty matters. But none of the lawyers are concerned about that. They don't care about the majesty and integrity of the law. Even if they're talking to young law students, they might use those words. But again, they do not let that govern their professional lives. They don't get involved in anything that doesn't pay them a fee. And then they select the cases. They don't want any that are controversial, meaning that have an impact on society and how society's business is carried out. Some judges, some lawyers do those things, but they're few and far between. But I believe that the law is a living thing when it's at its best. And it is an instrumentality for changing society, for righting wrongs, for giving some kind of hope to people who have no hope, even when it comes to being mistreated and discriminated against by the law in the courthouse. But because of the fine words and sentiments that comprise the law, those people on the outside can hope that someday there might be better judges, and maybe the words of the law will have life breathed into them, and they will work for us as they have always worked for white people. We always have to be the hopeless ones finding something to hope for. There was a song Dionne Warwick sang. She said, something even non-believers can believe in. I'm a non-believer in white people's law. Yet, I have to hope that it works. And I have to try to make it work. And sometimes I can. But that's not a part of my job description. Not as a black man, not as a legislator, not as a person who's dragged over here in chains.
1 minute.
There's a lot that happens that I don't believe white people could live under if the same things that I have to experience, they experience. They can't hardly hold up under what we do here on the floor of this legislature. Senator Ashford will get his bill. The lawyers will vote for the judge's increase. Then they hope the judge will smile on their clients when they go before the court. And I have tried to make my point, which I did not make, and that's not unusual here for me. So like Pilate, if I had water in a basin, I'd pour the water over my hands and wash my hands of LB 377. And tell Senator Ashford, do with it what you will, and get your fellow colluders to go along with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Time. Thank you, Senator Chambers. Senator Pauls, you are next. You are recognized.
Mr. President, members of the body, would Senator Chambers yield?
Senator Chambers, would you yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Senator, I would like perhaps a brief answer to this, if at all possible.
It will be brief.
Okay. Do you think people of my persuasion, I'm talking about my complexion, send their children to private or parochial schools so they would not have to deal with people of your race?
Yeah, I think a lot of them do, and some have expressed that as a reason for sending their children to these schools that you described.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I. Thank you.